Hello guys, thank you so much for tuning to our YouTube channel again. I'm Tarie from Purple Biko. Today I want to demonstrate stenciling on fresh cream cakes. It's a real struggle, but I'm going to demonstrate how I have successfully managed to stencil on fresh cream cakes. The reason why stenciling is so hard on fresh cream is because the cream is so soft. So the moment you put your stencil on it, it comes off when you are now removing the stencil. So in this video, I will explain some tips that will make your life easier when it comes to stenciling on fresh cream. So before we go any further, if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please subscribe to our channel, and if you like this video, click like and comment in the comment sections below. So guys, there are two types of stencils. There's this type of stencil, which is the shorter version, and there's this one, which is the taller version. To make life easier when you're stenciling on fresh cream, I recommend that you use this taller version, because this one is going to overlap and cover your whole cake. So when you remove it, you reduce the chances of smudging. However, when you use this one, the shorter version, when you try to remove it, the top part where the stencil ends is going to definitely smudge onto your cake. So this is the stencil height to go for. So guys, let's go straight to where it happens. I have put everything together that we're going to use for this video. We will need a stencil, some fresh cream, a brush, a bit of some oil, and a plastic scraper. Most people say that it's a total disaster to stencil on fresh cream, but today I'm going to share some tips on how I have managed to get a close to perfect look after stenciling on fresh cream cakes. So I'm going to start by greasing the stencil. I'm checking for the side that's gonna go onto the cake. That's the side that I'm going to grease. Greasing will help prevent smudging on the cake. It helps to prevent the stencil from sticking too hard onto your cake. Some people use water. I prefer to use oil, but water still works. I'm going to share some tips later on in the video on how to minimize smudging on fresh cream. I'm happy with my greasing, so I'll move on to mixing my fresh cream. Take note of the consistency of the cream. Don't make it too hard. It has to be thin so that when you apply it onto your stencil, it doesn't put pressure onto your cake. So I'm going to carefully attach the stencil onto the cake. Nice and slowly. Be careful not to press too hard onto your cake. The next thing I'll do is to secure the stencil using some pins. At this point, you don't press your stencil too hard, otherwise your stencil will smudge onto your cake. So I'm securing the stencil using some pins. It's pretty much stuck onto the cake already, but it's just so that I make sure that when I'm applying. So I've shared the first tip, which is greasing the stencil. The next tip is your stencil soon after applying your outer coat. Do not put your cake into the fridge after smoothing your cake. Go straight into stenciling. So I'm making sure my cream hasn't set. I'm still happy with it, and I'm going to apply the cream onto the stencil. The stencil is moving as I'm applying the cream, so I'm going to secure it once again using more pins. So the next tip that I'm going to share is the pressure that you use to apply your cream. I'm using a small knife so that I have control when it comes to how much pressure I'm using to apply the cream. So the next step is to scrape off excess cream using a plastic scraper. I specifically use a plastic scraper for this video because it helps me control the amount of pressure that I'm applying onto my cake as I'm scraping off the cream. I honestly don't use my metal scraper here because I feel like it doesn't give me control when it comes to the pressure that I have to apply. Continue scraping until you can see the stencil. So if you leave too much cream here, your cream will bleed into your stencil. So scrape until you have less cream and you can see the designs of your stencil. The next thing I'm going to do is to airbrush my stenciling with gold. To see how I diluted my gold lustre, watch the video in the description box on how to dilute food colors and lustres to the perfect consistency for airbrushing. So I'm going to airbrush the entire stencil, focusing on the part that has got the stencil designs. I'm happy with how it's looking. I'm going to remove the pins that I used to secure the cake stencil. So the next thing you want to do at this point is to carefully remove your stencil from your cake. I do it in upward and downward strokes. So I'm going to carefully open the other end of the stencil, and using up and downward strokes, I am carefully and slowly removing the stencil. My other hand is holding the turning table so that it doesn't turn as I'm removing the stencil. Don't rush through this step. Patience is everything. Slowly and surely I'm removing the stencil. The upward and downward strokes are so that you keep the pressure even onto the stencil. The moment that there is an unevenness in how much pressure you are using to release the stencil, your cake smudges. So at this point, I'm carefully and slowly removing the stencil. As I'm removing the stencil from the cake, I'm going to share with you the last tip to stencil on Freshcream successfully. It's the firmness of your cream. Your cream should be firm enough to take the pressure from the stencil without giving in. So make sure that instead of the usual 1:1 ratio that we use for our whip pad or fino whip, rather add a tablespoon or 2 extra on top so that your fino is firm enough. I've removed the stencil and this is what we've got. Don't worry about the imperfections. These can be easily fixed. I'm going to take my leftover cream from when I iced the cake. I'm just going to mix it because it's been sitting for a while now, using my palette knife and going onto the cake to fix any imperfections. So I will carefully do that, taking note not to ruin the stencil design. So guys, with stenciling, there are different ways of stenciling. You can put your stencil and airbrush straight. You can put cream so that there is a bit of some texture first and then you airbrush last. The possibilities are endless really. So for this one, we put cream first to add a bit of some texture and then we airbrushed on top. To fix the imperfections, I've decided to use a small knife because the palette knife might end up smudging onto my stencil detail. Stenciling is barely ever 100% perfect, so you need to follow through to fix any imperfections that might result. But the most important thing is to get a close to perfect finish. More than half the times I get a perfect finish. Today is probably because of all the eyes that are watching me right now. So maybe just to note, the camera person is barely breathing. They couldn't breathe when I was taking off the stencil. And I'm thinking, what about me who's removing the stencil? That's how hectic it can get. So I'm happy. I'm happy with how this design came out. I'm just going to dip the tip of my palette knife into a little bit of some hot water so that I can smoothen the parts that came out rough. Just to recap on the tips that I shared earlier on. The first tip is to make sure that your cream is firm enough. You can do this by adding an extra tablespoon or 2 of your powder cream. You can also toss your cream into the fridge after whipping it so that it firms up before you apply it onto your cake. Grease your stencil with oil to ensure that it doesn't stick onto your cake. Tip number 3 is to ensure that you don't press too hard. Use minimal pressure when you're working with stencils. Stencil immediately after smoothing. If you wait for your cream to set, then it's most definitely going to smudge. Work fast before your cream sets. This is it, guys. We're going to finish off assembling the cake with these decorations. I've got some gold leaf, some colored spheres, pink and gold, scissors, some roses, and some cake toppers. I'm not sure which cake topper I'm going to use for this cake. They all seem to work, so I'm just going to, say my mother told me to choose this one, but I want to choose this one. So this is the topper that I'm going to pick, because all 3 looked like they were gonna work really. So let's get straight into assembling our cake. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this video, please subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to turn on notifications so that each and every time that we upload a video, you are alerted. Thank you once again. Till next time.